All right, day 3 of the Great Push has concluded, and Cup A has been resolved. The top 3 teams out of Cup A are making it to Global Finals, and those teams are Mandatory Maj and Pedros per Hour. Shinra Tensei, unfortunately, was the team that ended up getting eliminated off of day 3. Coming out of day 2, Shinra Tensei looked like they were in pretty good position to be able to make it to Global Finals, but unfortunately, they got stuck in like a no-coup offensive for a really long time, and then really weren't able to put up this 21 in any reasonable amount of time. A lot of it came down to the fact that Sanguine is just really hard in this dungeon, and they were looking to need to reroute the key to make sure that their timer was going to be safe. And whenever they started to do that, you know, they had hours of a lead on the rest of the field on Pedros per Hour and Maj, but then, you know, they got stuck rerouting this no-coup defensive, and they weren't really consistently being able to pull off the very intricate and difficult waterfall pull. Unfortunately, they get eliminated off of that. But yesterday was the mandatory show. That is definitely what happened yesterday. And it started off with the Ruby Life pools, where the affixes on this dungeon were Tyrannical, Storming, and Raging. All in all, not too bad. Tyrannical, by far the hardest affix in this dungeon. You know, the Raging can be a bit difficult, but with really well-timed Evoker soothes, it's mostly fine. Ultimately, it comes down to the fact that Tyrannical, especially without Avoidance, is really hard. After everybody put up a 20 in the RLP, even though the timer looked like it was doable for a 21, everybody bailed on that dungeon and was like, you know what, not. Arguably more important than anything that happened yesterday, I got my predictions correct for who I thought were going to be the top 3, so that felt pretty good. All right, let's talk about some of the cool stuff that we saw yesterday. And again, a lot of this is going to be focusing on Mandatory, as they were the team that was in the driver's seat. A lot of the cool tech that happened yesterday started with them. First and foremost, we can actually see in the top left here, Mandatory back in Brackenhide Hollow, and you can see Skylark here. He's going to Vengeful Retreat hover over the gap, or Vengeful Retreat glide over the gap, and whenever he VR glides over this gap, what he's going to be doing is he's going to be grabbing like some Rot Hexers and some Filth Callers, and he's going to be then pulling them into the boss. And how he does that is, first and foremost, you're going to have to like snap those Rot Hexers and Filth Callers down to the ground, and then you Warnstone up to Mastein, and then you like re-snap the pack, and you see him just appear on screen right there. All those mobs are coming. On top of that, whenever they're rooting the hyenas, which is, you know, in tandem with the strat that we saw yesterday, this allows for Mandatory to do an incredibly large pull into the boss and get a lot more trash count. This makes your end of boss section a lot faster, and functionally, you know, the Frost Mage and the Shadow Priest are just going to be funneling into the boss anyways, and all this trash is going to passively die over time. And so this is actually a very good strat for just time save in general. On top of that as well, being able to time this Brackenhide 21 was very difficult for Mandatory, but I think that their practice in time trials, whenever this was a time trial dungeon, really came back to show how strong they are. They were able to do just an insane amount of damage to the totems, and a lot of that came down to just really strong usage, where you see here, Hopeful was actually topping damage on the totems, but everybody was contributing a significant amount. Skylark on the tank roll actually being the lowest is pretty surprising, especially since you typically think that the healer is going to be the lowest contributor. However, most players, basically everybody except for Stove and Skylark, were running double on use trinket. Hopeful, Mastein, and Mode were both running double on use trinkets, where they were running that Desperate Invoker's Codex with the Bellarellos, the Suncaller. And what the Desperate Invoker's Codex does is it allows you to stack up an on-use effect over time, and after a certain period of time, you know, pressing that on use does a lot of upfront damage. And, you know, they were rotating 2 to 3 on use effects every single time, whether that be something like Ray of Frost, Void Torrent, or any of the on use trinkets, including, you know, Grief Torch, including Bellarellos, including, you know, the Desperate Invoker's Codex. We were even seeing Convoke the Spirits being pressed on screen right there. And so they were using, you know, 2 to 3 of those every single totem. It kind of made me question as to whether or not 22 was going to be doable in the Brackenhide, especially since their 21 was so fast. So yeah, it was really cool. I thought that Mandatory looked really solid in this Brackenhide Hollow as a whole. On top of that, after they went and did the Brackenhide Hollow, they then went and did 22 Alg Academy, which we didn't necessarily know was actually possible. It seemed like timer-wise, it was going to be really tight, but the snaps that they were able to implement in conjunction with the fact that practice, they were able to do a 22 fortified Alg Academy in practice, really set them up to look strong in this dungeon. And you can actually see this in the top right if you're looking at Hopeful splits, how they had actually timed a 22 fortified Algathar Academy in practice, and so they knew it was possible. And that was cool. I thought that being able to do that, especially with the Invoker stuff that we saw yesterday, the Invoker pull really enabled the timer to be a lot more lenient on the back half. Now, it wasn't going to be super lenient. You know, they were still, I don't even know, 40 seconds under or something like that. Yeah, 40 seconds under. But I think in general, it was a situation where they knew that they could do it, and I think that honestly, not just like sitting around and not wanting to avoid showing strats was kind of cool. They were really going for the slam dunk in all of these keys, and I think that should be recognized. They really could have just kind of hid all of their strats and didn't show how they're so fast in all of the dungeons. But the fact that they were really just going to put the pedal to the metal and show how they're so fast is important. Let's talk about something though, co-streaming. So you see right here on broadcast, we had Hopeful's POV pulled up at some point, and he's actually blocking out stuff on his screen. They're blocking out specific UI elements that they don't want other teams to be able to see. They'll even block out things such as nameplate CD cast bars and things of that sort. And I think that this is unfortunate. So one of the rules for the TGP this time around is that one team member was mandated to co-stream every single time. Obviously, not every team member is mandated to co-stream, so they didn't, by and large. But the team members that were co-streaming ended up doing kind of stuff that was similar to Hopeful here, where they were blocking out UI elements to where, you know, other teams that would have been watching weren't able to really tell what, you know, kicks they were using, who was kicking what, how were things getting set up. And I think at some point, too, you might even go as far as, okay, these people aren't allowed to stream anymore. Only the Shadow Priest is allowed to stream. Because some teams were actually using their tank to stream, which is almost a bigger disadvantage because your tank has the most agency over what's going on. And I think you see the most things from the tank perspective. On top of that, nobody was saving their VODs. I think that the co-streaming thing was really unfortunate that it happened this way, where players felt like they had to, you know, protect some of the data that was on their screen to the point where they were blocking out UI elements. And I think that kind of defeats the purpose of the co-streaming, and it's kind of, you know, against the spirit of wanting to actually co-stream, or have the players at least co-stream. I do understand why they're doing it. Hopefully there would be a rule change that would allow us to be able to see all what's going on. I would also love a rule change that would force the players to use comms, personally. I think that just in general, very few people are World of Warcraft professionals. Very rarely are you just like a WoW pro player, but instead you're a pro content creator that plays WoW, plays in professional World of Warcraft tournaments. And I think that, you know, a lot of these teams, even like Hopeful and stuff like that, that's their primary source of income. And so, you know, taking months off to be able to compete in a TGP is actually a pretty big hardship for them. And I think that, you know, more ways that they're able to stream consistently, that's like pretty big. Obviously, I don't know the specifics of their finances. They might all be fine, but I think that, you know, it can't be easy taking a month and a half off just to practice, taking a month and a half off of your job just to kind of get ready for the TGP. And so I think that, you know, things like such as being forced to co-stream, it will probably help them in the long term, hopefully. All right, last tip I got actually didn't come from the TGP at all. I found this whenever I was watching Arx's stream yesterday. This is one of the spots of all time, I will say. So what we have is a Ruby Life Pools 19. Meldrusa Chillworn is about to get pulled. And you might think, why are they pulling the boss? Why are they all standing over here? What's going on? And it gets better. Meldrusa is pulled, and you can see the nameplate's actually working through the wall. And now you target Meldrusa, and the boss then gets pulled to the wall after the first hail bombs go off. And now you're able to hit the boss. And nothing happens to you. And you don't take damage from the chill storm. And you don't get hail bombed. Everybody can hit the boss, including the Invoker. Yeah, anyways. Alright. That's going to conclude today's TGP recap. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Next weekend is Cup B, so check that out. Goodbye.